Welcome to What's My Story. Thank you for joining us again today. We have a fabulous guest you're going to really enjoy. Her name is Linda Liu, and she is a comedian right here in Las Vegas. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Thank you. We're really glad to have you here. You know, I've known you forever, so I know a lot of things about you, but I want to make sure I get it right. So I'm going to read a couple things here because one of the things that kind of threw me, it said, Linda Liu is a Guinness drinking author, and I didn't know what a Guinness drinking author was.
It's an author that drinks Guinness.
And you drink that while you're writing, right?
That does help.
So no wonder you're a humor writer and a performer and a comedian. And you said you were a self-proclaimed corporate misfit as well.
That is true.
As well. That's very, very interesting. But you had a day job career that spanned more than 30 years in the fields of technical and career development and those kinds of things. And that brought you to write this new book. Let's see your book. Yeah, let's see the book. So this is the book, and you guys can probably see it up there, but I just want to make sure you see it. Do what you want, how to find a job that won't crush your soul. So tell us about the book.
Well, I wrote the book to help people be in a job that they love. And too many times, your job does crush your soul if you're not in the right place.
Yes.
And you never want to wake up Sunday morning and go, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow. So I put this together so that people could identify the type of work that's going to be best for them.
Yes.
And so then because if you're not happy in your job, it has a ripple effect into other aspects of your life, and you don't want that to happen. So that's why I wrote that, and it's basically everything I've known from working in corporate outplacement for years and years, put in one book.
Yes, it's going to be quite helpful to people.
I hope so, yeah.
Now, did you find a time in your life when you felt like your job was crushing your soul and you decided then to go be a comic, or were you always just super funny?
Well, I was not the class clown. I was a quiet, shy bookworm as a kid. And I really never did comedy full-time anyway. I always had a day job. And but I have had some jobs along the way that were they were soul-crushing. And that feeling of dread. And it was really because I was in the wrong place, in the wrong corporate culture for my personality. And when you're in the wrong place like that, it can erode your self-esteem, and you don't want that to happen.
No, you sure don't.
But I always I got into the field of corporate outplacement, and what that is, I'm working with people who have lost their jobs. And I got into that field in 1987, and my educational background, I have a master's in technical communication, so I'm a technical writer. And so that comes together well with writing resumes, and I always loved it. It was helping people, and my father was a bus driver.
Oh,
and
really?
He used to say, I don't work, I bring other people to work. And working in career development, I always felt like I don't work, I just help other people find a job. And I've always found it to be very rewarding. So during the pandemic, during the lockdown, I had time on my hands, and I was like, well, I think I should write another book, and this is the time, and write what you know.
Yes.
And so that's how this book came about.
Well, I think it's a fabulous book, and a lot of people are going to really enjoy it. And I think a lot of people are looking for how they can change their career. You know, I think the pandemic did that for a lot of people. It put them at home, and they were there, and they found out they kind of liked it.
Yeah.
And so now they want to change or do something different. So it's a perfect time for people to get this book. And they can get it on Amazon, is that right?
Yes. Yep.
So you can go to Amazon.com and get the book. It's Do What You Want, How to Find a Job That Won't Crush Your Soul. And
right.
so you want to be sure and do that. But I want to talk about your other book, too, because it's kind of controversial. I remember when you wrote it, Bastard Husband, a Love Story. I was like, whoa, what is that? Yeah, so tell us about that book as well.
That book came out in 2009. And I wrote that. That is a 1-year capture of my life after my second divorce, when I moved to Las Vegas by myself. I had no job, no friends, no husband, and just like rebuilding. And during that time, I used to say I was so miserable, even Jesus would cross the street if he saw me coming.
No.
I was just a mess. I was very sad. I loved my husband, and it really is a love story, but he liked the Guinness a little too much. I don't need 13 Guinnesses in one sitting, you know? And so during that time, I kept a journal, because I am a firm believer that journal writing can help you get the negativity out of your head. You can put it on paper. You can look at it any time you want, but it does you no good carrying it around with you.
No, it sure doesn't.
And so I got all my feelings out, all my frustrations, and I was really angry because my husband chose alcohol over me. And so it was on paper. I could look at it whenever I wanted. And during that time alone, I would force myself to go out. And so I saw in one of the arts magazines that one of the dive bars on the west side of town was having a comedy open mic. Mm-hmm. And so I would force myself. I'm like, well, they'll be in a good mood. And so,
that's a good place to go.
I went there, and like every Sunday night I would watch the comedians, and it was an open mic, and some of them were better than others. And then after a while I was like, I wouldn't be as bad as that guy.
No.
And having a background in writing and corporate training, I thought, I'm going to give it a try. And so I signed up, and back then you signed up 2 weeks in advance. And I had no friends except for the people in my divorce support group. So I was like, could you please come? And they came, and I was shaking, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. And then after I got off stage, a woman came up to me. She's like, I want you on my stages. And I was like, oh, crap. And that's how I started doing comedy.
Amazing.
And so the book came about because as things started to turn for me, I thought, there are other people who could benefit from learning about my experience of starting over and having a lot of self-doubt and then doing something completely different. And so now, as you know, a journal does not a memoir make.
No.
So I joined the Henderson Writers Group, and I learned how to craft my journal into a memoir with a story arc. And it's really funny, and it really is a love story, not just for the bastard husband, but about me. Loving myself enough to move forward.
Yes.
Yeah, so
yes.
I'm
and
really...
you've got to love yourself if you're going to stand up on a stage and do comedy, because that can be brutal.
It's a crazy thing to do. And like I said, I was never the class clown. I was so quiet and shy. And, I'm from upstate New York, Albany. And when people back in Albany would hear that I was doing comedy, they would say to my sister, is Linda funny? Because nobody ever thought of me like that. But another thing though is sometimes you have to move away from where you came from to be the person that you actually are.
Yes.
And so in a lot of ways, that, as miserable as that experience was, if it weren't for Bastard Husband, I wouldn't be here today with you.
Well, we'd still be friends, but you might not be here on the show.
Yeah. So the universe unfolds in divine order. I really believe that.
It does.
Yeah.
I believe that as well, because it's amazing the things that have happened in my life that have brought me to being here today. And it's funny you say you weren't the class clown, because I was.
Oh.
And now I'm learning to be quiet and behave.
Oh, don't do that. Don't behave.
Now you also did. You wrote a story, You wrote a story in an anthology, a Chicken Soup for the Soul book, right?
I have a couple of those.
Ah.
Yep. One was in the Chicken Soup for the Soul, Divorce and Recovery, which, I mean, we all aspire to contributing to that book, right? But I did have a story in there about one of the guys that I dated during my single years, alone here as I'm trying to rebuild, and he was quite a character. And then the other Chicken Soup is World's Greatest Mom, which is about my mother and how she overcame agoraphobia and is just like my biggest cheerleader.
Wow,
So,
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about your comedy career. Do you think there's anything in comedy, anything you shouldn't address, any subjects that you shouldn't talk about, or is it just like open for all? When you're up there, can you just pick on anybody and everything?
It's a very interesting and sad time in comedy right now, because lately in the past few years, everything is offensive. I am seriously waiting to get on stage and have somebody go, you said the word "the." That kind of turns me off. I mean, you just never know. Everybody has a little sensitivity, and it makes comedy harder. There are some topics I would never go to, but then there's some topics that I'm like, I think that's okay, but it doesn't go over well. And I'll tell you, the last time I got on stage was, it was back in like November. And I'm probably like one of the only comedians with hospice material, but
That's not really a funny subject.
I know it's not. But I was a hospice volunteer for years, and even back east and here, after my first marriage and after my second. And I say, well, I became a hospice volunteer because evidently I wasn't good at long-term relationships.
Now that is funny.
Well, it's either funny or, sometimes that doesn't go over. I don't do the hospice material very often, but there are funny things that happen even as a hospice volunteer. And back east, when I was volunteering there, they asked me to be a speaker in the community to like show that what it's like to be a volunteer. And they actually gave us a hospice joke book, so to lighten things up a little. And so, no matter how you think, like, what could possibly be funny about hospice, but there are some funny things.
Yes.
So the difficulty is there are people that think it's funny, and then there are people that don't. Mm-hmm. And today's climate, it's like nothing's funny anymore. It's just difficult to find anything that's funny.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of my early material that I could never do now because it's a different time.
Yes, it is a very different time.
Yeah.
Very, very different time.
And it's funny because the older audiences, I prefer them. The younger people are, and I don't have anything against young people, believe me, I was one once. It was a while ago. But it's nice in a way because they're so nice. They are so sensitive and they're so caring about other people. But to give you an example, I have this bit about how, my mother was a hitting mother, hitting mother. And a lot of parents in my time, we got hit. And I said that once to a younger crowd. I said, yeah, I had a hitting mother. And they were like, oh. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. I can laugh about it. My mother, I adore my mother. She's 87 years old. I'm still afraid of her. She's tough as a $2 steak. But it just shows you how there's generational differences,
Yes,
and
yes.
it's harder.
Yes,
Yeah.
when we were growing up, I mean, even the teachers got to paddle you if you were out of line.
Yeah.
You know, so today that would be a cause for somebody to call an attorney or to file a suit or whatever.
No
right?
kidding.
Yeah. Do you think there's politically correct where comedy's concerned?
As far as politics go, I don't even touch that because we're so divided. Half the audience is going to hate me one way or the other. But I think that whole political correctness is part of the reason why comedy is not as fun. I had this bit about sexual harassment at work. And in real life, I was like 50, and my boss came up to me at work and said, so-and-so's been talking about you and, in a sexual way. And I just did he ever say anything to you? And I was like, no. Well, what does he say? And that's politically incorrect.
Yes, very politically incorrect.
So maybe I just better find a different line of work.
But it's interesting that you have, there's two sides to you. People who know you through your day job, okay, through what you do, and you're very businesslike and you're very professional. And then there's this very funny you on the other side. Do you find conflict with that at times, to where when you're trying to be funny, you think, well, maybe I should be more businesslike, and when you're trying to be businesslike, do you sometimes think really funny? Do you think funny?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything is a joke to me. And a lot of times, I'd be doing a workshop, and I would think of the funniest thing. And, I'd have to suppress it and then go home and tell my husband. I have a new husband now. He's not a bastard. He doesn't drink at all.
No, he has to worry about you now when you're writing, right? Because when you write, you're doing this drink thing.
Well, I tell him there's two kinds of people, those who drink and those who cause people to drink. And I drink.
So you no longer cause people to drink.
No, he does.
Oh.
But I'll save it. I'll be like, oh, this is so funny. But, I got to keep up the face. But I can only do that so much. I mean, people know what I'm like. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've always done so well, even in business, because they know I'm a corporate misfit. I'm too happy and jokey and fun for the traditional corporate world. And I think that's what differentiates me, in that realm, where people are like, oh, she's, especially working with people who've lost their jobs, they want somebody who's down to earth.
Yes.
They want a person to give them compassion and go, okay, let's rebuild. So it works to my advantage.
How do you find being a female comic? Do you find that people are kind of prejudiced against female comics, or that the male comics treat you differently, or?
No, I got into comedy late. I was late to that party. I mean, I was like 46, I think, when I started doing comedy. And comedy, especially when you're first starting, it's mostly all young guys. And this was, 16, 18 years ago, too. I thought it was an advantage because you would go, especially at the open mic level back then, but even now you have one comic after another, a man, a young guy, another guy, and then all of a sudden there's a female on stage, and an older female, an extremely good-looking female. No.
An extremely good-looking older female.
Yeah. And so I would find that it was easier to get the audience's attention because it's like, oh, wait, here's something different. And so I've never felt, I never felt less than anybody.
Or discriminated against.
No.
Or anything.
Well, except for recently, one of my friends, the comedian friend, said that some stage asked him, the booker asked him if he knew any young, hot female comics. And he says, so I recommended this other one. I'm like, well, I wasn't even in that running.
Maybe you should have said, would you like an older hot female?
I know. But I thought, oh, wow. But then I was like, well, if their definition of funny is young and hot, good luck. I mean, funny is funny, and that's something, that Phyllis Diller taught us, Joan Rivers taught us.
Yes.
And so,
Lucille Ball.
Yes, it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you can communicate and you're still funny, go for it.
What about these people that use a lot of bad words? How about to say it that way? They use a lot of off-color humor and bad words, and they think that's funny. Is that funny? Because I don't think it's funny.
No.
It's like the more they can put the F word in, the funnier they think they are. But I don't see audiences really laughing like that.
I mean, you can use bad language and still have it be hilarious. And I love profanity. I mean, I really do. I really do. But that is not in itself funny.
Funny, no.
And like sexual humor, I've never really, in the very early days, because I was doing bar shows and I figured that's what they want, but that's not me. And there's some things that I'm just like, if I hear one more male comedian go on about their prostate exam, I'm like, come on, that is really low-hanging fruit,
And that definitely is.
That and the balls. So there are things that I think, like, you can have humor of a sexual nature or a bit that has, language in it, but that alone does not make anything funny. And a lot of times people, I think, throw in more F-bombs because they lack some real content.
Yes. Because real humor is really funny, with or without the words.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I saw a guy once, his name was Finus Henderson. He was performing with a group of other comics here in Vegas. He didn't say one off-color word. He didn't tell one off-color story. He was the funniest thing I had ever seen in my life, and he could sing. I mean, he was amazing, and yet I've never seen him on a stage here again since that time. It's been quite a long time ago.
Wow, I don't recognize the name either.
No, and he was amazing, just absolutely amazing. But I remembered that about him because nothing was off-color, and yet he was really funny. He was really funny. So tell us what makes the difference in your book project and other projects, and how did you? Well, you kind of told us why you wrote it, but tell us a little bit about how you wrote it, about the writing process and how you write things. I mean, is this book funny even though it's real serious?
This book, that's what differentiates it. I mean, there's a million books about career development out there, and they don't have any voice. And this book is like, I'm talking to you. I hear people, people have commented me, I hear you, I can hear your voice. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but you could tell it's written by a person with a personality. There's no personality in a lot of the career development books, and they're all kind of serious. And like pushing people to like climb the corporate ladder with that expectation that you have to get ahead. And the reality is, for a lot of people, a job is just a means to an end. They're only working so they can have money to enjoy their real life.
Yes.
And,
or to survive, just to pay their bills, some people.
Right. Right.
They're not working for the fun of it.
Right. Yeah, and that's another reason I always felt like a corporate misfit, because I was happy doing what I was doing, but I didn't want more responsibility, or, I'm all about work-life balance. And so I kind of give people, I think I say in there on the first page, like, I've never had a day at work that was better than a day at home. And that's the truth. You know, like, I'm one of these people, if I won the lottery, I'd be like, peace out.
I think I'll go spend my money and hang out.
Yeah. So this is different in that it does have really, really good information. I tell people exactly how to write a resume and how to determine what they should do next. And I have all kinds of exercises in there. I give them sample cover letters. I give them scripts of what to say, in response to every interview question I could think of, and how to negotiate an offer. So there's really, really good information in there. It's just presented in the not serious way.
Well, I think in a way that people will accept it and read it. Because,
it's
because
fun.
so many times when you read a book like that, they really are kind of dry and boring. And so you put it down before you really get the information that you need.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So-
think your book is exceptional.
Oh, thank you. I'm very proud of it.
You should be. You should be very proud of it. Very, very proud of it. So like we said before, you can get Linda Liu's book on on Amazon.
Amazon.
She is on Facebook, but
Yeah.
you can get her book on Amazon.com. And do you want to give them your website in case anybody would like to be in touch with you, or how to get your contact information? Just look into the camera and tell
Sure.
them.
I'll just give you my email address. It's Vegas. No, it's not that.
We're having trouble.
That's
you and
my
I both.
Facebook.
We can't figure out what we're doing here.
My email address is lindalou at Aging Nymphs Media.
Oh wow! What an email address.
Yeah, well, Aging Nymphs Media is the publishing company that I set up for my first book and this one. So Lindalou, Lindalou, at Aging Nymphs Media. And I still do. I do private consulting. If you need a resume, I fancy myself as like one of the top 5 resume writers on earth. I mean, how humble.
Hey, I better grab you and have you help me. I'm not planning to change jobs right away, John. I'm not planning to change jobs. But they would help to even have a good bio, that people want to know more about.
I can write anything.
Oh.
Dating sites, obituaries I've written.
I think I have to grab you to write some things for me. Maybe what I'm looking for in life, huh?
I'm totally smarter than I look.
You are?
I am.
Well, you look pretty good.
Thanks.
My father used to always tell me, be sure that people underestimate you.
Yeah.
He'd say, if you want to get ahead in life, be sure people underestimate you. Do you find that to be good advice?
Yes, I love it. Yes.
Okay. Well, Linda, thank you for being here.
Thank
I had a
you
great
for
time.
having
I hope
me.
you'll come back again.
Anytime.
Yeah,
I
write
love
us
you.
another fun book. Let's do it.
It took
it.
13 years between this one. but
Okay. Well,
no.
we don't want to wait 13 years.
No.
but you can come back in the meantime.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We have really enjoyed having Linda here today, and I hope that you've enjoyed it and that you'll come back with us again next week. Thank you.